My declaration of social independence action of myself, is sick H. Whitson, December 11, 2012. The singular declaration of Mad Dr. Whitson. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one person to dissolve the social bands which have connected him /her with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal self to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle him /her. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that he /she should declare the causes which impel him /her to the social separation. I hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, all people of society are instituted among men and women, deriving their just powers from the consent of the ones whom which they develop social relations. That whenever any form of social relationship becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of thyself to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new social relations, laying their foundations on such principles, and organizing their powers in such form, as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that social relations long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shewn, that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right thyself by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is the right of thyself, it is the duty of thyself, to throw off such social relations, and to provide new guards for thy own future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of myself, and such is now the necessity which constrains me to alter my former systems of social relationships. The history of the present relationships of mine is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having indirect object the result of an absolute deterioration, as they fail to ever last. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world, most of whom exist as my social relatives have refused their assent to accept my company, the most wholesome acceptance, necessary for the good of both sides to our social relations. Some of them have forbidden themselves to resolve conflicts of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operations to resolve our conflicts till my attempts to resolve conflicts should be performed, and when so suspended, they have utterly neglected to attend to them, thus leaving all operations toward resolution as my burden to bear, rather than co-operating with me to resolve them. Many of them have refused to allow the accommodation of my nearby presence, so as I must relinquish my right of representation in my justifications, a right inestimable and formidable to only the ruthless people to declare their rights of coexistence with the people I attempt to present myself to. Thus meaning, many people accept the ruthless people in their presence, rather than my innocent being. Some of them have organized together their means of justification into topics unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from their mental depository of justifications, which I seek to fairly understand their rights versus my own rights, for the sole purpose of fatiguing me into compliance with their measures. Some few of them have dissolved my representations regarding my rights repeatedly, for opposing with manly firmness to their invasions on the rights of mine. Some, perhaps many of them have refused for a long time, after such dissolutions of my representations, to allow me to ever obtain righteous treatment from others when I well deserved such respect paid toward my rights. Opposingly, they would manipulatively devise such a larceny to obtain mass control of my rights, whereby my assertive powers, incapable of annihilation to their devised control, have precursed me to return my attentions back to my cognitive reference for my exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from my being without attention to the present environment, and convulsions within my patterns of cognitive as grand distractions from my attention paid toward my environment. Some certain ones of them have endeavored to prevent any of my dwelling on any estate which they are dominant, for that purpose obstructing the justifications which represent my rights to be eccentric, refusing to invite me to their chosen grounds of company to encourage any of my migrations toward their domain, and causing me to seek out the conditions of new appropriations of environments. Some of many have obstructed the administration of justice, by refusing their assent to any of my rights whatsoever, as though I am a replaceable object to their perspective. Some of them have tried to brainwash various judgments of my understanding, expecting me to be dependent on their will alone. However, the brainwashed tenure within their practices depend upon the will of the brainwasher, and the amount /quality and payment /reward of their salaries /earnings. Haven not yet happened to me. Some have erected a multitude of new comprehensions, and sent out forth swarms of thugs to harass many people, and eat out their substance. Some have kept among people, in times of peace, rogue warriors at stance, without the consent of any innocent bystander. Some, they affected to render their gangs independent of and superior to the civil power. Some, they have combined with others to subject me to a jurisdiction foreign to our constitution, and were ignorant to comply by our laws, giving assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For large bodies of armed rogue men and women hidden throughout the nation, for protecting them, by a mock trial, from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade of brilliant ideas, for imposing apathy on me, for depriving me of my pride, in many cases, of the benefits to thieve glory, for driving me beyond great distances away from them so they can be happy, for abolishing the free system of English etiquette in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary manner and enlarging their offensiveness, so as to render it as a horrendous example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute disgrace which we are blind to not truly see, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures, and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in too many cases whatsoever. Many have abdicated government here, by declaring us out of God's protection and then waging war with others. He has poured our seas, giving us our coasts, gave grounds for our towns, and rejoiced the lives of our people. He is, at this time, transporting large armies of foreign angels to complete the works of creation, fulfillment, and his kingdom already begun with circumstances of charity and truth, plentifully paralleled in the most glorious ages, and totally worthy of the head of a civilized nation. He has blessed our fellow citizens taken to heaven somewhere up high. He can see us and hear the cries of our country, how some are to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has mercy for all domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring up the inhabitants of our frontiers, the Indian natives, and the rest of the world of all ages, races, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions I have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. My repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. Each of my offenders, whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity, which denounces our separation, and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name, and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare, that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain, is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to leave war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our